No excuses. The boy who found his reason. In a quiet village called Mossley Hollow, where dusty roads cold through old farmhouses and wind whistled through cracked fences, there lived a boy named Rowan. His father, Alaric, was a simple farmer whose hands were always cracked from the soil. His mother, Edith, spent long days tending vegetables in the small plot behind their cottage. Rowan was 15 when he first felt a fire inside him, a pull that went beyond plowing and planting. He dreamed of studying seeds, soil, and new ways to grow life from the tired earth beneath his feet. But in Mossley Hollow, dreams like that were often mocked. When the neighbors saw Rowan sitting under the old oak tree with a battered notebook, they'd laugh. Book learning doesn't fill a belly, Bo. Sometimes, Rowan's older brother, Giles, would nudge him roughly. You think your scribbles will make these fields bloom? Stop making excuses. Get your hands dirty like the rest of us. Rowan never answered out loud. Instead, he'd look at his rough, ink-stained fingers and whisper to himself, "No excuses. I will find my reason." Each dawn, Rowan worked the fields alongside his father. Each dusk, when the fields fell silent, he'd light a stubby candle and read whatever worn books he could borrow from the local church. They smelled of mold and old ink, but to Rowan, they were more precious than gold. Sometimes, when the crops failed and the family's pantry lay bare, he'd hear a dark voice inside. "You're wasting time. No one believes in you. There's no point." But then he'd hear his mother's gentle voice in the dark, covering him with a blanket as he fell asleep over his books. "Rowan, no excuse is worth your dreams. Hold on to your reason." One autumn afternoon, a young agronomist named Sullivan came to Mossley Hollow. He was sent by the city to test the soil and give a speech about modern farming. Rowan slipped into the back of the tiny village hall, clutching his notebook. After the meeting, he chased Sullivan down the dirt path. Sir, what crops could grow here if the soil is so stubborn? How can we use less water?" Sullivan looked him over. Skinny, dirt under his nails, but a fierce light in his eyes. "Why do you care so much, Bo?" Rowan straightened his shoulders. "People here find excuses. No money, no rain, bad soil. But one. I need a reason. My father's fields fail every year. If I can change that, I can change more than just this farm." Sullivan's lips curled into a small smile. He reached into his bag and pulled out a packet of experimental seeds and a thin booklet. "Try these. Take notes. You'll fail at first. Everyone does. Just don't let excuses grow faster than your crops." Rowan turned the small shed behind their cottage into his secret laboratory. He stayed up until the candles burned low, testing soil in broken jars and scribbling ideas into his notebook. He learned to use every drop of water twice. He lost crops to pests, drought, and mistakes that made him want to tear his pages to shreds. One night, after a fierce storm flattened half his experimental plot, Rowan sat in the mud, his face buried in his arms. The voice of excuses hissed in his mind. "The soil is too poor. You have no tools. You're just a boy. Give up." But the memory of his mother's voice rose above the hiss. "No excuses, Rowan. Find your reason." With tears cutting through the mud on his cheeks, he looked up at the stars. He clenched a handful of wet earth in his fist and whispered, "This is my reason. I'll make it grow." Months later, when spring returned, something remarkable happened. Rowan's tiny plot bloomed twice as full as any other field in Mossley Hollow. His neighbors gathered at the fence, whispering in disbelief. "How do you do it, lad? What did you feed them?" "Magic." Rowan wiped sweat from his brow, a proud grin on his face. "No magic. Just better seeds, careful watering, and no excuses." Even Giles, who had once mocked him, shook his head and muttered, "Well, maybe you were right after all." Word of the bull who made stubborn soul bloom reached the city. Sullivan returned, this time with an invitation, a full scholarship to study agricultural science, with a promise that Rowan's family would receive enough support to keep the farm running in his absence. When the letter came, his father, Alaric, read it aloud by the fire. Tears slipped down the old man's weathered face. "You found your reason, Rowan. No one can ever take that from you." Years passed. Rowan studied abroad, then returned to Mossley Hollow, but he did not come back to boast. Instead, he built a small learning center beside his family's land, a place where young villagers could gather, read, and experiment like he once did. Whenever a nervous boy or girl stood before him, mumbling about all the reasons they couldn't, Rowan would rest a strong, calloused hand on their shoulder and say, "Excuses grow wild like weeds. Your job is to pull them out and find your reason. Do that, and this earth will always feed you back. The heart of the story. Rowan's journey whispers this truth. The world is full of reasons to give up. Empty pockets, barren soil, doubters at every corner. But the strongest seeds grow in the fields where excuses die. So, next time you want to quit, ask yourself, am I planting excuses? Or am I digging for my reason? Because it's never excuses that feed a dream. It's the reason that keeps it alive.